I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Levy Center to today's talk with Dr. Rivka Neria Ben-Shachar. This program is made possible by the Levy Center and by the Levy Endowment for Public History and Outreach, and I'd like to thank the staff of the Levy Center for making today's event possible. This is going to be the last event of the academic year sponsored by the Levy Center, but there will be many more events coming up next year, so please keep your eyes open when you come back to campus next year for the exciting program of the Levy Center. So there has been a real explosion of scholarship in and around the subject of Haredi or ultra-Orthodox Jews. In fact, it has become one of the most interesting subfields within the larger field of Jewish studies. And one of the most interesting questions that has been asked is how do Haredi Jews, who often present an ideology that is manifestly anti-modern, meaning they are committed to resisting the encroaching currents of modernity, how do they actually confront and engage with sort of these very waves of modernity, these currents of modernity? How do they actually formulate a response in ways that are quite different than one might expect? That is to say, one might expect simply going to a corner and wrapping around oneself all sorts of layers of protection. That's a very common perception of what Haredi and other, for that matter, traditionalist Jews and people of other denominations do. But in fact, it's not really an accurate representation of that engagement or confrontation with the currents of modernity. We might say that Haredi Judaism is a very modern, anti-modern movement. Anti-modern insofar as that is a declared ideology, at least for some members of the community, but decidedly modern insofar as it lives within the large modern environment that we inhabit, with all of the seductions, allures, and challenges that that modern environment represents. And so there's a very sophisticated and nuanced process of navigating and negotiating that encounter. We might assume that Haredi Jews, along with traditionalists of other faiths, would be completely resistant to all forms of technological innovation, for example. That's true to an extent and not true to an extent. In fact, modern communications methods have been essential to the expansion, the growth of Haredi Judaism really from its inception. One question that has animated scholars who are committed to studying Haredi Jews is indeed the use of technology, of computers, of the internet, and especially of cellular phones, which present at one's fingertips all sorts of opportunities to acquire knowledge that might be deemed deleterious to the preservation of communal norms. And this has been really a raging question within the Haredi community. Can one use cell phones? And if so, what kind of cell phone, or what kind of access to the internet through one's cell phone can one make use of? And there are many gradations of responses that have been proposed, but I think it's a very interesting mirror onto Haredi society. Within that world of research, our speaker today, Dr. Neria Ben-Shachar, has done really extraordinary work in addressing that process of navigation between traditionalist and more modern currents, not only in studying Haredi Jews, but in a comparative sense, through a comparative lens, by studying Haredi Jews and Amish, and not just Haredi Jews and Amish, but the use of cell phones, telephones, generally by Haredi women and Amish women. This is on the basis of very careful ethnographic work that has been taking place for years, in which our speaker has really embedded herself in not just the Haredi world, but the Amish world as well. It's a fascinating story in and of itself, Haredi women and Amish women, and it's also a fascinating story in that larger picture of how traditionalist groups contend with the challenges and opportunities of modernity. So I'm really delighted that we have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Rivka Neria Ben-Shachar, who is spending the current year at the Katz Center for Advanced Judaic Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, where she is the Ruth Meltzer Fellow. She is back home in Israel, a senior lecturer at the Sapir Academic College in Sderot, Israel, where she teaches courses on research methods, communication, religion, and gender. She is significantly, for our purposes, the author of the book Strictly Observant Amish and Ultra-Orthodox Jewish Women Negotiating Media, about which we will hear, and which I encourage you all to read in whatever form you can gain access to it, because it is really a compelling account of these two extraordinarily interesting communities. So without further ado, I'm delighted to hand the stage over to Dr. Rivka Neria Ben-Shachar.
Thank you, Professor Meyer. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, and Chelsea, for, sometimes you see a speaker comes and you can't believe how many emails and work there is behind, the stand. So thank you so much. We'll talk about the Amish and Ultra-Orthodox. I'll promise you a story in the middle, and thank you again for coming. Okay. Thank you. So we talk about the Order Amish and the Ultra-Orthodox Jewish. People think that the Amish are a cult or whatever. They are ethno-cultural, religious Christian group. They are Anabaptist, which means that they don't baptize their children. They need to choose to be Amish, which is totally different than the Jews that unfortunately just were born Jews. And their religious and social life are dictated by the Onang, order in English, which means that they don't have all the written halacha or our law, our kind of written law. They have it. There are certain rules that they work according to them. I'll speak about that later. And the Ultra-Orthodox, for the other side of the world, there are a lot also in the US. They are also a religious group, but they are Jewish, and their social life are bound by strict interpretation of the Jewish religious law. And let's talk about the Amish. At the beginning, they live in North America and Canada. Most of them live in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, but to the best of my knowledge, they also arrived already to Colorado, and some New Order Amish live in Bolivia and places like that. There are about 330,000 people, but they are a very, very small amount in terms of percentage of the United States population. However, they double themselves every 22 years. The only communities in the world that double themselves so quickly are Amish and Ultra-Orthodox that double themselves every 16 years. But this is subject for another talk. And here are the rules that build, their Onang. They are plain and simple, which means that they have set of rules for everything. The women have only one pattern of dress that they are allowed to have. The men have specific pants, specific, everything is specific. Even the color of the curtain on your window must be white or green. The shed is green, the curtain is white, and the house is almost empty, very, very nice and clean, everything from wood, but very, plain and simple. You just enter the house and you feel what does it mean to be plain and simple. They must be obedient to the community and the church. And they have to be separate from the modern world. And now you ask yourself, how can I be separate from the modern world if I live in the US? This is very easy. If you don't have a car, and you don't have a driving license, and you drive horse and buggy, this is the first thing. The second thing, you don't have electricity power in your house. You're separate from the modern world. And I can say that after some days that I stay with them, I think that we need to have special bless for the electricity. The first time I came back, I was just turning on the washing machine and say, I can't believe that I have a washing machine. It's unbelievable. And the electricity, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. You just can't believe that you have electricity and, of course, car, So they can separate themselves just because they don't have things that I suppose that you never think about the fact that you have a car and electricity unless you don't have them for some hours, and then you can believe, But don't have it, and then they can separate themselves. The Amish women study only 8 years. I'm feminist, so it's hard for me to believe that somebody can study only for 8 years, but they are not feminists, but the boys and girls study only for 8 years. The school look, if you saw Anne of Green Gable, the school look, the same one-room class, okay, 8 classes in one room, about 40 children. The teacher is 19 years old, and when I asked her, did you study how to be a teacher? I said, yeah, of course. How much time? 3 days in the summer. And she teaches 8 classes, okay, from 1st grade to 8th grade at the same room. It's really, unbelievable. But in terms of education, they finished after 8th grade. 7 children, the average, per woman. There are some families, like in the Ultra-Orthodox community, with 14 or 11, but you meet more people with, 8, 9, 10. And all the women are staying at home mom. Once they get married, around 21, 22 years old, they quit their job. They already had job because they finished school when they were 14, and they stay at home, take care of the family and the kids. Sometimes when the children are growing or if they need more income, they do something from home. Some of them have successful small businesses, but mostly from home. Sorry, the Ultra-Orthodox are totally different in so many ways. There are more than 13%, between 13 to 14% of the Israeli population. It could be fine if there weren't be a society of scholars. This is Menachem Friedman term to call the unique phenomenon. I don't know about other community in the world that most of the men are not working. Okay? So because of a long story with the Israeli army and all the horrible things that our government, I hope that it's fine to talk politics here, but okay, one of the most horrible things that the Israeli government did is to promise the Ultra-Orthodox that they don't need to go to the army once they stay in the yeshiva. So, of course, Ben-Gurion and the other prime minister couldn't imagine that most of them, actually nowadays about 200,000 young men, sit the whole day and study in the yeshiva. Okay? So let's say I enjoy to study the whole day. Because of that, I'm one of the very small percentage of people that just happy when they're in the library, but we are a very small percentage of the people. I can't believe that 100% or 70% of the Ultra-Orthodox men are happy to study the whole day. Okay? And this is a very unique, horrible phenomenon, because most of them, again, don't want it. It's just, part of the politics. But as the Israeli population, as Israeli society, we face a lot of challenges because they don't serve in the army and they are not part of the workforce. Because of that, the Ultra-Orthodox women, about 80% of them, very similar to the secular and religious women, work outside home. They have to provide for their family. And also Israel is basically welfare society, so they get a lot of money from the government. And however, their salary is much lower than the secular women because they have about 14 years of education, but the education is less than university degree. They have another system. They also have about 7 children per woman, and just imagine, normal Ultra-Orthodox women, she has 7 kids, she works out of home, full-time job, okay, and she doesn't have, all the help that she should have for that because they are a very poor community. The income of Ultra-Orthodox men is something like $400 a month. Okay, so it's very hard to have a large family in this way. I'm sorry, I'm keeping on. Okay, now I suppose that some of you ask yourself, how did I find them? So now for the story, and I'm sorry, Professor Myers, that you already heard that. So I'm not Ultra-Orthodox myself. I grew up in National Ultra-Orthodox, which is specific group between the religious, modern Orthodox, what you call here, and Ultra-Orthodox. But I have a lot of Ultra-Orthodox family and family members and friends. So it was very easy for me to write a PhD about the Ultra-Orthodox. But the Amish is another story, and I promise you the story, and here it is. So when I wrote my PhD, my advisor asked me to read about the Amish and include them in the literature review because I wrote about Ultra-Orthodox women and media. And I really tried very hard to negotiate. If some of you are students, I assume that you in the US you're much more polite than in Israel, and you never negotiate with your teachers. Am I right? Or not? Am I wrong? You just accept everything.
Yes.
Oh, great. Great for you and great for your teachers. And so he said, you should read about the Amish. And I said, no, it's in English and I don't have time and whatever. And the truth is that I didn't have time. I was a social worker. I taught 7 classes a week. I had 2 little girls. I definitely didn't have time. But he forced me and he said, the Israel said, you must do that. And then I started to read about the Amish and I just fell in love with them. I truly fell in love with them. And I just decided that once I'll finish my PhD, I'll go to the US for postdoc, and then I conduct a comparative research between the Amish and the Ultra-Orthodox. I was so ignorant, I'm first generation of higher education, that I thought that when you finish your PhD, your advisor or whatever, somebody organized for you a year in the US for postdoc, and I just go there and the red carpet will take me all the way from the airplane to the Amish. But then I understood that it's not so easy, and I have to write applications to come to the US. Okay, I submitted 12 applications to come to the US with my dream to conduct a comparative research between the Amish and the Ultra-Orthodox. Can you imagine how many I got? It's very easy to get, to the US.
0.
Yeah, how did you know? Yeah, very nice 0. I cried a lot, and then came like an angel, Professor Mark Bretler from Brandeis University, now from Duke. You know him. He really was my angel, okay? He read the proposal. He sat with me for, he didn't know that from this point he will read everything I'll write for a long time. But he sat with me, he looked at the proposal, he looked at my face, I cried again, and then he said, okay, let's talk business. You've never been to the States. You don't know English. And at this point, I couldn't say one sentence in English. I just read in English, but I didn't know, how to talk. You've never met Amish people. Who will give you the grant? Then I cried more. And then he said, okay, let's start all over again. You will submit another proposal about something yet you know something about. Hopefully, once you will arrive to the States, you will realize your dream to conduct a research about the Amish. Great, but he was such a nice, professor that he said, you can send me the proposal. Perhaps before you write the whole proposal and send it for translation, send me 1 paragraph, okay? And then I started to send 1 paragraph at a time. And it came back, no, you're not there yet. No, it's boring. No. And then finally I wrote a paragraph about Jewish women that create rituals for themselves, and he wrote something like, okay, for the beginning this is fine. Oh, thank you so much. I wrote another application. I started to submit it. Again, I got many refusals, and then my husband submitted a proposal to Harvard, and he just got it. And it was not fair. It's not fair. So he will go, and this is my dream, and it doesn't make sense. And then I got an invitation for a Fulbright interview. Fulbright interview means that 7 people ask you questions in English, and I don't know English. I had less than 3 weeks to study English for the interview. Okay. Again, came Mark, like an angel, sent me all kinds of questions that they can ask. I also tried to think about question. I wrote the answers in Hebrew, sent for translation, and learn by heart all the questions and answers that they can ask, okay? But just imagine the situation that I couldn't sleep, of course, because if I will not understand the question and they will ask it in different ways. So it was a nightmare, but the next day, the sun was rising and I got Fulbright. Great. So we are going to the US. I got another grant from Hadassah Brandeis Institute, so we are going to Massachusetts. And I told all my American friends the next day that we are going to Massachusetts and I conduct a research about the Amish in Massachusetts. Now we are supposed to laugh because
I don't think
there are no Amish in Massachusetts. Yeah. Okay. So they were laughing. So, okay, one more step. We arrived to Boston. Now we need to plan the next, okay? So we tried to find somebody that would invite us to Pennsylvania area. We found distant relative. We asked them to invite us for the Thanksgiving. And because we asked, they invited us for the Thanksgiving. Okay, one more step. We're in Yardley, Pennsylvania. And then we started to ask friends, how can we meet the Amish? And our friends, we had friends that just came back from a trip to the Amish, say, no Amish will invite you for breakfast in their farm. Remember the sentence, okay? But you can go to different museums and see, whatever in Lancaster area. I was very upset. I wanted to meet, the real Amish people. I don't want to see, the Jewish in the Jewish museum are not the real Jews, okay? So that my husband said, let's put some of the Amish museum addresses in our GPS. Hopefully something will happen. Okay, one more step. We're going to Lancaster. Great. We arrived to Lancaster Friday after the Thanksgiving. I didn't even know what does it mean in the U.S. Friday after the next Thanksgiving, everything is empty. No one in the street, no Amish, nothing. And then we saw one Amish in his buggy. And my husband said, Rivka, let's follow him. And here you can see the buggy. Okay? This is our Jeep Grand Cherokee. Follow the Amish person in his buggy. And we drove behind him for a long time. All the traffic behind us, we will just follow him. He will take us to the real Amish people. At this point, I was so excited that I said to my husband, okay, let's kidnap him. We will kidnap him, and if the Amish want him back, they will allow me to do research. And he said, God, please calm down. Please, please, please calm down. Hopefully something happened. And I just started to pray and say, look, God, I did everything I could to arrive here to this point. Just help me to find the real Amish people. And then from one of the farm went out young Amish woman. She went to take the mail, the post. And my spouse said, Rivka, it's the opportunity of your life. And I said to him, what should I do? He said, I don't know. But if I would have seen the opportunity of my life, I would do something. Okay. I stopped the car. I ran after her. And I didn't know what to say. So I just said the first sentence I had in my mind, and it was something like, hi, my name is Rebecca, like Rebecca from the Bible. I came from Jerusalem, from the Holy Land. Can I speak with you? She turned around. And until nowadays, she always reminds me how I just jumped to her yard and screamed like, a crazy Israeli. I want to speak with you. She said, what? So I said that again. And she said, what do you want? And I said, I don't know. I just want to speak with you, to see the farm, to meet your family. Okay, park the car. Call your family. I'll show you the farm. Okay. My family jumped very happily from the car. And she took us to see the farm. Her father left, he came out. And she said, Dad, the Jews are here. Okay. He was shocked. And then he said, the Jews. How they so vile, all the way from the Bible. Okay? And then he asked us, are you really Jews? Yeah. Do you believe in Jesus? So thank God my husband has PhD in Jewish history, so he gave him a very complicated, answer. But basically we know that he was exist and everything, again. And then he asked, do you still sacrifice? Okay, and then his daughter said to him, Dad, the Jews are exist. They had the Holocaust. They have a place in the Middle East. He didn't know. Okay? He showed us, the cows, the pigs, everything. And then I said to her, please ask your mom if we can come in. She said, my mother said, welcome. She invited us for breakfast. We didn't eat, but she invited us. And then after, we spent some time with her, but this is not a research. So when we left, we took the address. All the driving to Boston, I just spoke with my spouse and said to him, what can I write this lady that she will allow me to come back? And, I grew up in a large family. I had friends. One of my friends, there are 13 children, 10 children, 9 children. I knew that their mother loved me a lot because whenever I came for lunch, I washed the dishes. So I wrote her, I promise you to take part with all the housekeeping stuff. After that, she said, I didn't believe you for a moment, but I thought that you will come and, you will smell the farm, you will run away. Okay, so it took about 2 months just to coordinate my visit because I didn't know that they have phone outside home. Just imagine letters, Boston, Lancaster. Okay, here I am driving all the way to see them. I slept in the night. My advisor, with his wife, spent 1 year at the CAT Center, Professor Rechiel Limor and Order Limor. Do you know Order Limor? Okay, so I stayed with them in Philadelphia, and in the early morning I left, with a lot of butterflies in my belly, just looking forward to the adventure with Amish. I said to myself, for 25 hours, don't mention the word research, okay? Nobody wants to have, research about them. So just, immerse in the family. So I arrived. It was very embarrassing. She said, Rivka, what are your, expectations? What do you really want to do here? And I was like, I want to study for you, to learn from you. I want to know you better or whatever. And then I looked around. The kitchen was, very messy. 6 kids just left it. And I said to her, my grandmother used to say, when you see dishes in the sink, never ask, what can I help? So I will not ask. I rolled my sleeves, and I started to wash dishes. And I washed it for 1.5 hours, and I wash very fast. So you can just imagine how many dishes. I finished, I started to fold the laundry. Then I swept the floor. Then she said, wow, you really came to help. And then I saw that she looked at my car with and I said, are you allowed to drive with me? So will be your Shabbos goy. And she said, will you take me to see my grandchildren? I said, yeah, of course, for shopping, whatever you need, here is a car. So after 25 hours of driving, washing dishes, folding laundry, everything, I said, can I ask you perhaps some questions? Can I write what you say for my university work? So yeah, of course. You mean study? Of course, you can ask whatever you want. And from this time, we became very good friends. The next time I came, I had a draft of the questionnaire. I stayed with all the women in the family, helped me, to organize a questionnaire in a way that they will like it. They took the horse and buggy, spread the questionnaire. When we came, all the family in the summer, I had all filled questionnaire in envelope. We came to Israel. I conducted the same research in Israel. But the real story is my really love relationships with this family. The last time I met them was 2 weeks ago, I think. So we keep very, very warm relationships. She's one of my best friends. And also I owe her a lot. One of this is this book that I wrote, just because of them. I hate to say that, but what girls ask me, so you have 30% off, and that's it. But I thank her a lot for these amazing relationships. Now back from stories to real research. So for this specific talk, my research questions were, what are the use patterns of cell phone and smartphone within Amish and Ultra-Orthodox women? What are their perceptions regarding smartphone and cell phone? And what's the symbolic meaning do non-user attribute to these devices? And you can see the photos I took. Here is a quilt that they create. The Amish quilt is totally different than the American quilt, which is much more colorful. They have specific pattern, again, plain and simple, separate from the world, everything you can see also in their quilt. But here I wanted to understand, you can ask yourself the same questions. And here's perhaps the reason why I'm so happy that you are here, because sometimes if people come for talk about other communities, we try to figure out things about ourselves. So think about yourself. What are your use pattern? What do you think about your smartphone? And what is the symbolic meaning you have for your phone? The population is a sample, okay? The old Order Amish, there are about 40 different groups within the Amish population. So I picked the old Order Amish in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in Israel, women that define themselves as Ultra-Orthodox. I have only 40 Amish women and 42 Ultra-Orthodox, and I know that this is horrible that I have such a small sample. But the truth is that when people ask me, how did you get budget so quickly to conduct the research, the answer is very easy. There is certain places in the US, also in Israel, that you go to a wall, you don't need to pray, you just need to put small plastic bag, you put a number, and then you get money. You can ask for more, you can get more, you ask for more, you can get more. Do you have this here in California? Great, this is very easy. So basically, I paid everything for this research. So I couldn't, afford it. I paid for the women that answer the questionnaire. I paid for the research assistant. So I have a very small number of women that answer me. And also, this is a snowball sampling. I teach research methods. Snowballing is the most horrible, unrepresentative sample. But if you have a better idea to come into these communities and get, more people, please let me know, especially within the Amish. And I had research assistant within the Amish and the Ultra-Orthodox. Within the Amish, they took the horse and buggy went to their friends, gave them the questionnaire, and came back the next week to pick the questionnaire. Within the Ultra-Orthodox, it was easy. Some of them had email, and some of them, they just, knock on their friend's door and ask that there are crazy women that conduct research about the Ultra-Orthodox. Let's move to the results. So, about 5% of Amish women own a cell phone. They're not supposed to, and thank God they answer the truth. Almost all the Ultra-Orthodox own a cell phone. They answered, honestly, 60% of the Amish and all the Ultra-Orthodox women used cell phone. They allowed to use somebody else. They allowed to drive with somebody else. They allowed to use somebody else's internet. So it's okay that they did it. Some of them try even not to. Okay. No one in either group had a smartphone at this point. I collected the data in 2012 and 2013. Nowadays, many Amish women has flip phone, they call it, like small phone, like the Nokia. Some of you are so young, I don't know if you even know what does it mean. Okay?
I used to have one.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about, okay? But nowadays, many ultra-Orthodox women have smartphone. It's called kosher smartphone. It's heavily filtered, but they have it, okay? And now for some small stories about that. In ultra-Orthodox, in Amish wedding, of course, there is no phone in the area, no camera, no phone, okay? Within ultra-Orthodox wedding, you see a lot of this small Nokia, really, Nokia's phone, okay? And they decorated it with, birds or stickers or whatever, and all of them have huge sticker, בפיקוח ועדת הרבנים. Under the control of the rabbi's committee, this phone is kosher, which means no text, of course, no internet, anything. You can call and get phone calls. Perhaps you have calendar over there or alarm, okay? Very, very, very simple phone. They also have a system that control your number. So if your number starts with, if I remember when, 052769, it means that you have a kosher phone. So it's another way to control you, because if you have, some ultra-Orthodox have hidden smartphone, and if you call your children's school with a smartphone, they can figure it out because the number is different, okay? The smartphone can't get this number. So basically the phone companies work with the ultra-Orthodox leaders to control their community. This is, another issue. But you can see many phones around and women use them all the time. Within the Amish, when I travel with them, so I used to drive with them, and she could say, I have to do a phone call. Here is an Amish phone. We can stop there, and I'll do my phone call. And I said to her, you can use mine. I prefer not, okay? And then I said, look, it's not a smartphone. I had an American old, flip phone. And she said, I prefer not. And once, she did a phone call, she just hold it like a weapon. There's very, very carefully that now they became more modern, so she agreed to use my smartphone. But she said, can you please help me? I don't know how to make a phone call with this, machine. Okay, so they're different in this pattern from the ultra-Orthodox. Their perceptions are very, very, very similar. All the women, almost all of them, wrote in the place that they had to write the open respondent about content, time, and community values. So Anna said, the phone is misleading. So many things on it, leading you to think about things yet that you don't want or need to know. But Sarah, she's ultra-Orthodox. The smartphone is the most dangerous device. It includes newspaper, radio, television, and mail. It has impure content. Everything is there. Obscene pictures, connection with strangers in Facebook. When you compare their responses, you can understand that perhaps Anna never used a smartphone, okay? She just know what she heard about. Sarah knows very, very, very well what she has there, okay? She also know about Facebook, so they know whatever they have there, but they don't want to use it. Many women wrote that it's waste of time. The truth is, I agree, okay? The smartphone is a waste of time. If you have time when you travel, you can always learn Torah, okay? Or read something or whatever. You don't need, It will be, harder when I'll continue. And it's written the community values. Our leaders who are appointed over us, have decided it's something we don't want among our people, and Dvorah just said the rabbis forbid it. So I used to, say that and say people following their leader, this is, perhaps amazing. However, 2 weeks ago, we had the community bishop of my friend. They came to us. We live this year in Lower Merion in Pennsylvania. They came to us. They came with us to the synagogue, and then they came for Shabbat lunch. And we had a very nice conversation. And we just heard from him that I asked him what's going on with the flip phone in your community. Because I already heard that in some communities, they can get decision that all the community do a change, and then they are allowed to have only flip phone. His face just changed. He was very, very sad. And he said it's not only the flip phone. There is huge change in Amish communities in Lancaster area. There are, many Amish communities, but in Lancaster area, communities just split because people can't handle it anymore. They don't only want flip phone. They don't want smartphone. They want electricity. Some of them want car. So they separate the groups because people just can't handle it, and it's a very, very, very sad process. The last time it happened, he didn't know that, but I knew that because I read about the Amish, in 1910, when the landline phone started in the United States, it also separated the community, and about half of the Amish left the community because they wanted to have landline phone. Later, the Amish allowed to have landline phone, but outside home. But now the fact that the phone is at home, and the bishop told us with tears in his eyes, he said, some Amish children, we didn't know that the parents had smartphone, but they came to school with smartphone. This school don't have, the school doesn't have electricity. So these people are not supposed, of course, not children, okay, and they came to school with a smartphone. He said, we just took them out of school. This is what happened if you are ultra-Orthodox and your children use smartphone, the next day you need to find another school for them, okay? So it's a huge change within this community. In terms of the symbolic meaning, what do they think about the smartphone? Sadie said, I see how much the English means non-Amish, it's like the goyim for the Jews. They call text and show pictures all the time. The evil accompanies you everywhere, said Hannah, not leaving you for even a moment. Okay, so just you should start to feel what I felt when I read it. Somebody look at you, okay? So we so used to use our phone wherever we go, okay? Perhaps, I just walk here, I walk at Penn. In every street, people with phone just walk like that, and then, and somebody look at you, okay? They look at us, and they try to figure out what's going on with us. Here I almost heard that they say, you are moving backward. When I asked them, what do they think about that? They understand that it changed the system of connection and separation between us people. It's disrespectful. People look at the phone instead of face-to-face. Everyone is immersed in their smartphones. They don't lift their eyes to see the sun or the people around them. It creates separation and autism. People are not connected to their environment. The chin is lowered. The small, incurious eyes search for something. I went to the park with my 5 children, said Tila. Every one of the kids there gets 10 times more attention than the secular girl whose mother has one interesting smartphone. And this is hard, especially the fact with the eyes. Mm-hmm. So the longest time I didn't see my Amish friends was during COVID. For 3 years, it was very hard. I canceled 4 flights, why. And once I came back, I had very strange feeling when I spoke with them. And then I figured out that you speak with them, they look directly to your eyes, and they stay there, okay? Mm-hmm. Usually, if you want to feel these feelings that somebody look at our eyes more than 3 minutes, we need to pay for, okay? You need to pay for therapy that somebody literally look directly to your eyes and listen to you. But the Amish, they look at you. I felt it especially with the kids. Okay, I have 3 kids. It's very hard to get their attention, okay? Because I'm not interesting enough. I don't dance all the time. My students, they look at me for 30 seconds and then they move to another place. The Amish children look directly to your eyes and they have the connection. They listen. They look at you. And this is something that once you don't have it and then you have it, you want to have more of that, okay? And this is very rare in our communities, that people just look at you and not on another screen. Even if we don't have the screen with us, we lost the ability just, to look at each other. They also spoke about self-connection, but here I heard only ultra-Orthodox voices. People are not available in the space of time in which while they are texting and surfing. People don't listen to themselves, don't think, ask, or pray. People have lost the soul tranquility that they had. Adults sit in the bus, texting, playing cards. The smartphone still our self-quiet quality time. Okay, and think about Goffman's study from the 60s, what people are doing when they are in the elevator. So think about the elevator as horrible place, very small place, we're close there, claustrophobic, with other people. It's embarrassing. So what he found that people look at the numbers, which is very stupid, the elevator will move if you look or not. But you try to do something with your eyes. And now look around, people just take their phone and look at it like it's very special thing happened to them in the phone, okay? We just fix as a problem of embarrassing, from switching our eyes from place to place and hear what they said about it. We could just, think or do something else, not, just look on the phone. And women, especially ultra-Orthodox, used medical terms. It's an addiction. He can't be without the device that distracts him from life for even a moment. People are afraid of being alone and escape from themselves. People need to be with themselves. I see the bus passenger talking, surfing, typing, all on Facebook. It's obsessive. So thank you for, diagnosed us, but it's hard. They spoke also about attachment, also the Amish and the Ultra-Orthodox. People stick to the phone, missing out the life. If you have a smartphone, you have a stain. It means that you are spoiled. The smartphone is like oxygen entering the body all the time. The danger goes with the DNA everywhere like a weapon in the content. Okay, so basically they try to say we are too much connected to this machine. And here I take an advantage of the fact that I study social work as my BA degree, because when I read their response, I just thought about all the theory of study in development psychology, and first of all, attachment theory. So Bowlby wrote about attachment theory. Basically, he tried to understand what happened to children when the mother leaves the room. And he found that the children with a good attachment, they can cry, but they relax very fast because they know that the mother is there and she will come back. Okay? But when they don't have good attachment, they cry horribly because they don't know if they will see their mother again. And now just imagine that at the beginning of this talk, somebody here would take the phones from you. I would say also the computers. For 1 hour, you will not have your phone. Okay? It's a very nice experiment. Okay? So I can assume that some people would feel very, very miserable. So hopefully you will not cry, but sometimes this is very, very hard. We just use the fact that we can just reach it, okay? So in terms of attachment, this is what I understand from the Amish. You are too much connected to this, again, machine. Another theory is separation individuation. Basically, when the baby is born, he just almost immersed with his mother, and then all the time, till we are adult, we separate more and more. And if you are here at the university, you don't see your parents all the time, so you have to be, independent. And now think about our relationships with the phone, okay, in terms of separation, individuation. We are not really, independent people, okay? I can say as Orthodox Jews, the fact that during Shabbat, Saturday, for 25 hours, I can't use my computer or my phone. It's just very, very, very healthy. But let's say what happened if I decide that I will do that also on Sunday or Tuesday or whatever. This is much, much harder. If it's not a religious issue, it's hard to believe that I can do that, okay? Because, you're connected to the machine. In terms of infant development, again, I took Winnicott theory. We try to understand how babies are mostly, toddlers, how they know what is part of me or not part of me. Okay, so many children use their thumb, just to relax. What is the difference between your thumb and the teddy bear? Okay, now think about the phone. And he came up with a transitional object inside that if you have perhaps siblings or nephews or children, some of them have the blankie. Do you know what is a blankie? It's like a blanket that you never allow to wash it because it has a specific horrible smell, but they have it all the time with them, and it's like it gives them the feeling that they are safe. Now think about the phone, okay? What's happened to us, especially in social situation, when we are embarrassing, we don't know other people in the room, we just run to reach our phone and to feel, much better with ourselves. The last term I want to share with you is from communication, context collapse. It's what happened, and Meyrovich wrote about that in 1985. He mentioned Goffman wrote about house, let's imagine house without walls, okay? So it's very big, it's very nice, but you don't have no privacy, okay? The kitchen, the restroom, the bedroom, everything is open. And he said this what happened when you have television. And now think about the smartphone, the social media, and you don't have to, confess, but I can confess that it happened to me more than one time that I sent email to the wrong person. And especially when it happens that I have a brother and spouse with the same name. So my brother wrote me, I'm sure that you didn't want to send me this email, send it to your husband, okay? It's just simple things that you send mistakenly to your workplace instead of your family or whatever, and they call it context collapse, okay? Also in terms of privacy, I'm really jealous my Amish friends because, Google and Apple know better than me everything about me. There is no privacy anymore. Forgot about privacy. They have privacy, okay? They can, if they want not to tell something to somebody, they will not, okay? It's not that somebody just follow them all the time and know everything about them. So to summarize, I just want to say what I felt that I got from their outside perspective. They look at us. They look at us from outside, and I can say, personally, I changed a lot of my behavior with the phone after I stayed with them for a long time, because they enable us to see the smartphone as not only transitional object, this is part of our body and the soul, and perhaps we should ask ourselves if we want that this machine will be part of our body and the soul. It moves all the way from attachment to enmeshment, and it affects multiple levels of context collapse. So I don't want to come like a preach and say, oh, you should do this, you should do that, but I assume that when we want to hear something from another communities about ourselves, it just helps us to think more about our relationships with everything, but specifically now with media. And thank you so much for your listening, and thank you. Yeah.
So I think we're going to have, you and I will have a little bit of a conversation, and then we'll open up for others. Thank you for summarizing your really fascinating research. Just ceaselessly fascinating. I wonder if we could begin by your telling us what are some of the similarities and differences you actually encountered between Haredi women and the Amish women? What are the, beyond the use of technology, general worldview and mode of existence and living in the world, or living at a distance from the world? You've both studied it and lived it.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago you were in the company of your friend. So do you feel like these are my long-lost twin sisters?
Well, let's start with the differences. So the Ultra-Orthodox, the education does a lot, okay? You're at university, you feel what does it mean. So sometimes just in regular conversation, I just can't handle it that they have only 8 years of education. For example, I tried to explain why I'm vegetarian, and I said that I couldn't handle the cognitive dissonance anymore, that I like to eat meat, but I think that I shouldn't, so it's a cognitive dissonance. And they said to me, what does it mean, cognitive dissonance? I said, look, this is in English, no? And there, so many things that you just know. Okay, you don't need to go to the university to hear so many terms, but once you leave school after 8th grade, you don't know. The ultra-Orthodox women are educated. They studied a lot, so perhaps they don't know exactly where is California, but they know, what's going on in the U.S. once some of the Amish didn't even know that Israel exists. So it's different. In terms of their world perception, the Amish are very, it's hard to understand what they know about the news. So they know a lot what's going on in their area. They know something about the U.S. They know that there are elections. Most of them don't vote. The ultra-Orthodox are very involved in politics and everything. They know what's going on. The real similarity is their relationships with God. And it's really unbelievable. And I grew up like that, but in some, in academic stuff, in academic world, I am very critical, so it's complicated personally. But the feeling that you are doing what God asks you to do. And once, if you are Amish or Ultra-Orthodox, when you change your baby's diaper, you bake challah for Shabbat, or you bake bread for the next church meeting, you're just doing what God asks you to do. And because of that, usually people ask me if they are happy. So I ask you, are you happy? I'm not sure. But I think that I'm not so happy because as a liberal person, I never know if I'm doing the right thing. I always, ask myself, are you sure? They know that they are doing the right thing. So some of them are the happiest women I ever met, even though they work unbelievably hard. So just the feeling that you are doing the right thing does a lot. And this is something, when you speak with them, you just feel kind of very deep conviction that you're in the right place, which modern people don't really have.
What do they feel about modern people? Do they feel they are unfortunate to not be able to live the life they're living? Do they, and more generally, how do they see the surrounding world as a source of constant threat and potential contamination, as do some Haredi or ultra-Orthodox Jews?
Yeah, so in both communities, they think that the modern people are very miserable. And also their perception about the modern people is, look, I teach at Sapir College. It's a secular place in Israel. So I have a friend, she said, wow, so all your students are use drugs and drink alcohol the whole day, and be careful when you are going to the restroom. Perhaps they have HIV, and you can get it from the restroom. Okay? So it was
who said that?
One of my ultra-Orthodox friends. Just be careful, with all these secular people. Of course, they can influence you, so you should be very, very, careful about yourself. Within the Amish, they know, they don't live in separate places. They have English neighbors. So they know that there are, real people, but they're also very, very scared that, the influence will come to them and change them. Basically, it's happened in both communities, okay? The smartphone just came in. The fact that some of the people leave the community. It's true, it's very, very hard to be strict religious in the modern world. So part of their method is just to say that these people are so miserable. You don't want to be like them. They are very miserable. We have the best life, ever.
This is a hard question to answer, but is that a self-justification? Do you find it a sincere belief? What do you regard as an ethnographer, as the degree of contentment of the life of the Amish women whom you know? Do they seem not just at peace, but sort of living the lives they want to live?
So perhaps it's a cultural issue, but sometimes with the ultra-Orthodox, I feel that they try to convince me that they are so happy and everything is fine or whatever. And the Amish, again, it's very hard in terms of, cultural differences. I don't understand the American, culture. I'm here a lot. It's still hard for me because as Israelis, we say no very, and the Americans, they beating around the bush all the time, so it's very hard to understand so many things in terms of culture. The Amish are very, very polite. So certain things I still don't understand. But I would say after living with them for a long time, they're in their place much more. They don't try to convince me that they are happy. This is a life, and the truth is that they are the ultra-Orthodox are very critical about themselves. They also have very nice sense of humor. They have unbelievable amount of jokes about the ultra-Orthodox created about themselves. Mm-hmm. The Amish don't. They don't think that this is funny to be Amish. It's very funny. It's very funny. You drive horse and buggy. Are you serious? And they don't look at us this way. They're so, believe in themselves. They're so feel that they have the truth. Mm-hmm. So I believe, you never know what people feel, but I believe that this is what they feel.
One of the things that we see in the ultra-Orthodox world is that women both want and feel the need to get more education in colleges or even some certain kinds of university settings. That this is either necessary for economic purposes or because they need it for personal fulfillment. Is that impulse present at all amongst Amish women? And you said something like there's no feminism. Is that so? Is there no tension against the very carefully defined and demarcated gender roles?
Okay, so first of all, it's very hard to get to the university if you have 8 years of education. So
just the aspiration, though. That's what I meant. The appetite.
Even it's not part of your idea what to do. It's like you don't think that perhaps if you will have time next year, you will go to the moon. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they don't think if perhaps they will have something, they will go to the university. It's just not part of their life. Within the ultra-Orthodox, for the men, it's much harder than for the women because they have more secular studies. But it's part of something that somebody that went to the university. For my Amish friends, I think that I'm the only person that they know. And I know them for so many years, and they know that I came for a sabbatical. And even though this year I told her I finally finished, one talk that I have to work on, and then she said, so what do you still have to do to get your PhD? I have PhD for so many years, and she just, she just doesn't understand, the system and how it works. So it's different, but I will tell you the truth that some years ago I have mind-blowing conversation with young Amish women. She started to ask questions, about the college I teach, and then I understood that it's a painful conversation for her. And then she almost cried, and she said, I wanted to be a nurse. I just wanted to be a nurse. I dreamed to be a nurse. And I just can't. I have 8 years of education, and I have to leave my community if I want to do that. And America, the U.S., is a very hard place. If I leave, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. How can I just go and have, she was 22 at this point, but still, to do all the high school stuff and just, but I just want to be a nurse, and I will never be a nurse. This is horrible. And it was very painful conversation. But the other women, I try to understand what they feel. So once I drove some Amish women, and it happened that 4 of them were young. They just married the last year, and all of them were teachers before. So they were 20 years old, but they already had some years of working. And I asked, so how was the choice to leave your work and get married? And I always tell my students this story. It's a good question that you never ask. It's a stupid question. Because they started to laugh, and one of them said, I like your way of thinking, Rebecca, that you think that it was a choice. Once you get married, you leave your job. That's it. And then she said to me, how do you manage working and have kids? So I almost cried, and then she said, it's hard, isn't it? And I said, you can't split your heart. So I have one heart, and all my heart is for your family. And when you try to split your heart, all the problems happened. So this is their perception about feminism. I started to ask some of them, and they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm just crazy thinking, feminist stuff. And one of them said to me, you know what, you have a problem because God created the world this way. God, the church, men, women, children, animals. And if you don't understand that, you have a problem.
Yeah. So I think just two more questions. Did you encounter any exiters or any what our colleague Ayala Fader calls hidden heretics? That is the phenomenon of people who are born and raised in this community and secretly either desire to leave it or conduct a life that very often online that is quite different from the established norms of the community. So that probably doesn't exist. But what I encountered in studying a Haredi community that I studied was plenty of people, mainly men, who rolled their eyes about the norms of the community.
Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous, all these rules. And I would often ask those people, and do you want to leave? And they say, oh, no, I couldn't do that. Do you want your kids to leave? Oh, no.
No.
Why? Because this is the most beautiful form of life I know. So there are all sorts of tensions. But do you encounter? I mean, I think there's a reality show about at least boys, young men leaving the Amish community.
I never believed the reality show. So within the Ultra-Orthodox, I encountered mostly men. Within the Amish, again, I conducted a research about the women. The women are much more pious in every community than the men. But I know some Amish men that they are much more modern than they are supposed to. Mm-hmm. Once, one woman said to me, they work outside home. And my boys work for a construction company. What do you think that they are doing when they sleep in the motel, when they take them far away? They watch television. So she didn't know the term, don't ask, don't tell, and I really wanted to ask what they are doing during the night. So I was like, who wants to go shopping? I'm available to take all of you, whatever you need. And one boy said, I want to go with you, free driver. He didn't even put the seatbelt. And I was like, can I ask you some question? I promise I will not tell mom. And he was like, what are you doing in the night at the motel? I said, I watch television, and they are such honest people. I said, what do you watch? And he said, I can't say, and I can tell. And I was like, do you watch pornography? It's this is my research. He was like, no, of course not. We are not supposed to. It was, But then he said, but I saw some, crime or blood or things violence that I'm not supposed to watch. And he was so, and said, I promise you I will never tell mom. I never told his mom. Now this person has five kids and he's a minister in his community. I will never remind him this conversation. But, some of them. But today there are some people that, one of them asked me so many questions about Israel, and then say, I watch YouTubes about Israel from my workplace. So basically, he is not really hide it, but he doesn't do what he's supposed to do.
So I want to ask you about something that I certainly discovered when comparing Amish and ultra-Orthodox communities, and that is attitudes towards the state. And a good way to get at that is to look at the court cases involving the two communities. So the most famous court case involving the Amish community is called
Yoder, Wisconsin,
Yoder v. Wisconsin, 1972, which basically granted the Amish the right to exempt their children from mandatory public school after 8th grade. And that's a famous moment in sort of education-related litigation in the United States. One of the most important cases involving ultra-Orthodox Jews, in fact, a community that I studied, was a decision in 1994, so 22 years after Yoder, that essentially paves the way to allowing this Haredi community called Kiryas Joel to create its own public school within the confines of the community. So in one case, the impulse is to sort of exit the system, the political system. In the other case, it's a matter of utilizing the system to advance the interests of a separatist community. I'm just wondering, what attitudes towards the state did you know what it looks like for ultra-Orthodox Jews?
But also
what does it look like for Amish?
So first of all, there is an amazing article. I'm sorry I forgot her name. that she compared all the law issues that Ultra-Orthodox and Amish had in the U.S. So it's unbelievable. The governments use the Amish never, do anything with the government, but Wisconsin, VSU, there it's, the government against them. They don't ask anything for the government, and they try to do whatever they can that, the government will leave them alone. The Ultra-Orthodox do everything they can to get everything from the government. Here in the US, in the Israel, it's just unbelievable. They are very smart in terms of, and I read your book about it's unbelievable how they get everything. It's just, they are very good lawyers, and they just use, the Constitution against itself. It's really, it's crazy. In Israel, it's much more horrible because there are, huge community. And it was very interesting that I asked both groups, do you feel part of the Amish? I asked, do you feel part of the U.S.? And I asked the Ultra-Orthodox, do you feel part of Israel? 72% of the Amish answered yes. Many of them wrote very nice, thank you, America, for allowing us freedom of religion. We are very blessed that we are here. People behave with us very well, 72% of the Ultra-Orthodox answered no. We don't feel part of Israel. I have to say that it was 2013. We have government with Yair Lapid, so they have some issues with, take all the Ultra-Orthodox to the army. They didn't succeed, but the fact that I checked 3 times to make sure that it's, again, 72% in both sides, that they feel part of the U.S., and they're Amish, they drive horse and buggy, and they feel part of the U.S., and they're so thankful for this place that saved them, from Europe, and the Ultra-Orthodox don't. So it's
there are other studies on that very question that show a much lower number.
It's not representative sample.
Yeah.
So it's, only...
And
it
would be very different
time.
in the United States, where many Ultra-Orthodox Jews feel that this is a kingdom of grace, a malchus shel chesed. But that's a source of a really interesting conversation that may take us down a rabbit hole, as we call it. So why don't we open up now to questions that you have? Begin with Naomi.
So I actually had a question on the representative sample. Because I was thinking, so I don't do quant research. My impression, though, when you were talking about the snowball sample and how it is a very problematic way of sampling a community, and my first thought was, well, that seems to me like it would be less of a problem if you're studying the Amish, because the entire point of their community is homogenization. Like, it must be so much easier to get what you would confidently consider a representative sample of a community that's whole ethos is around not having an individual identity. Whereas my impression, at least like from the admittedly limited contact I've had with the Orthodox Jewish community in Israel and in the United States, is that they're rigid, like they have rigidity in the rules they enforce, but the idea of individuality is it's still something that you're supposed to develop. And I guess I was wondering first how the question of cultural homogeneity played into your approach to the study, but also like what you came away with in terms of and because Israel also is a society that has a lot of mechanisms for homogenization.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what the army is for. So even though the Ultra-Orthodox don't go into the army, they have their own mechanisms of homogenization, like the yeshiva. So I guess I was wondering, how that played into your thinking and what you came away with in terms of the question of individuality in these communities.
Okay. So first of all, it's very, frustrating because I don't have this framing of a sample, like the list with all the individuals that could be included in the research. Because of that, it's never been representative study, and I want to be very honest about that, because the truth is that I teach research method, and it give me, sometimes I feel like allergy when people say, I had representative research within the Ultra-Orthodox. Really? Do you find a list of all of them? Please share with me, because so I want to be honest. In terms of homogeneity, the Amish, once you know them, you understand how many differences you have in a specific family. So the mother doesn't have, anything. Her daughter has real washing machines that connect to the electricity. How do you have electricity at home, please? Her son has flip phone. His brother watch, YouTube. So in every single family, you have so many different Amish people. So basically thinking about community like in homogen, I know so many ultra-Orthodox that they have, one child that's off the derech, left, the ultra-Orthodox, or went to the army, or went to the US, or whatever. So even if the system the system could be the government or the community, try very, very hard to make all of us in small boxes, the life are much more complicated. And because of that, the combination of qualitative and quantitative research does a lot. But I'll share with you my dream. Hopefully I'll get budget for the ultra-Orthodox side, but I still work on the budget for the Amish side. My dream is to conduct a comparative research about the population, the fact that they're only groups that double themselves. So what I really want to do is to have at least 10 research assistants. Every one of them will spread more than 30 questionnaires. Finally, I want to have 1,000 questionnaire in every group. So it will be like women that help 3 women, everyone has 10 women, everyone will spread, 30 questionnaire. Finally, I'll get. Because when you have many snowballs, you will have much more, in terms of, but both groups are not homogenic at all. Did I answer you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's really interesting.
Yes.
Doctor, thank you very much for a fascinating presentation. Kind of brings up my memory where I grew up in a village in India. I had to go like 200 yards, fetch the water from the well. Did not have shoes in my feet for 12 years.
Wow.
I could not write, and then, of course, to progress. But my question to you, doctor, is that what about the daily subsistence of the Amish population? Like, do they have running water in the toilet? How is the hygiene maintained? How do they cook daily? What sort of food do they cook? I mean, do they have processed foods? Just kind of a daily operation of their lives. I would be fascinated to know that. Thank you.
Okay. So when I drove the first time to Miami, we lived in Boston, and before I left, my husband said, "Do you know if they have running water? Like in the regular toilet?" Said to him, "If not, you will see me here tomorrow." Okay. So thank God I choose the Order Amish. They don't have electricity, but they have running water. The Schwarzentruber Amish live in Ohio, don't have, and also in upstate New York, they don't have running water at all. So I will not conduct research about it. I will not stay with them, okay? It's too hard. But there are different, Amish people. So what are, in terms of the food, in my imagination, they eat only organic, healthy food directly from the field. So in the summer, they have food from the field. In the winter, all the summer, the women now work very, very hard to conserve food in cans, like our grandmother did. So they have full, the basement look like store. It's unbelievable, the amount. But they also eat horrible, horrible processed food. Everything with lard, which is not healthy, and so no, it's not like in the imagination that they eat only amazing, healthy, fresh food, but they bake and cook, which is very different than the normal American. Okay, did I answer you?
It's like, thank you so much for the fascinating lecture. It's very common in the research of the Haredi community to assume that, let's say, in the 80s, 70s, when the connection to the outer world was the TV, it was total ban. It's unthinkable to come into a Haredi house and have TV. No. So, and then as a result, the number of the people that left the Haredi way of life was very, very low. And in the late 90s, 2000 later, when they tried to block the internet, but there was total failure because it's something you need for your work, unlike the TV that you don't need for your work. And it's assumed that many people that left this way of life say, oh, I was sitting in the library, I was reading, oh my God, people say that the Bible was written by people, not by God, contains many mistakes, many contradictions. So I was a little bit wondering if in your research is the content of the materials that they found within the smartphones or whatever, found them like change their way of life, make them leave their religion or their way of life. And maybe also, I still didn't understand how they are leaders. Do they have clergy? Who takes the decision there?
Okay. So the Amish that confess to me that they use, smartphone or internet, it's hard to explain how much they have, their mind is just open. They know so many things. And some of them just live. You understand finally that so many things that people told you are just not true, okay? Basically, we came from the monkeys. What can we do? It's just so hard for them to believe, and then they just can't handle it. So I understand why the leaders try to control the content. It makes sense in their, but then they need to pay the price, because if you try to control everything and something like smartphone just come hidden under the mattress, then you can't control them anymore. It's not like television. In terms of their leaders, it's very interesting. They have a bishop, minister, deacon, and 2 preachers usually in every church, and they choose it they choose them in a very interesting way. It's like election. They women and men, they vote from them, but also part of this is just, they say that this is God's decision, but basically they put some notes in the Bible, and who opens the right Bible and finds a note, something like that. So then they found who will be the bishop, and this work is forever till you die, and they volunteer. And this is unbelievably hard work. They give a lot of hours. They need to prepare the preach for every week and for every other week, and they are not allowed to use notes. So just imagine that you need to give a preach.
Not allowed to.
They're not allowed to. You just need to memorize everything, which is, I've been there, I told you last week, with Professor Weizmann and his wife, and she was a rabbi, and she said, how do you, prepare? She said, Rebecca told us that you don't use notes for your talk. How do you do that? I try to memorize. So just imagine that you need to prepare like so much things to do, and also you deal with all the community problems without getting paid. It's amazing that the Amish try very hard to keep. They don't have church house. They move from house to house every other week. The only thing that the community own is a wagon with their prayer books, with song books, and the dishes for the lunch after the church. So basically, it's very cheap. And here, if you're a Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever, you need to pay a lot just for your membership in a community. They don't need to. They pay for the school and everything, but it's very, very smart in terms of, you volunteer and this is for life. So, okay.
Okay, I have a small question, then a bigger question, and we'll wrap it up unless there are others. So, yeah. The small question is, after the small question, we'll go to you, and then I'll ask my big question. What about the use of German? How prevalent is that?
So they speak at home Pennsylvania Dutch.
They do.
And during church, they sing in High German. Some of the preach is in High German, but mostly Pennsylvania Dutch. It's not really German.
Right. It's a dialect.
Dialect.
Sermons are always in Pennsylvania Dutch?
Always. But I have another friend that I spend time with in New Order Amish in Ohio, and they are very liberal, thank God. If they have English visitors, one preach is in English. Oh. So it was my first time to understand what's going on there, because if not, just imagine yourself sit for 3 hours and hear Pennsylvania Dutch and understand a word, and it's just, it's very boring. But, I was so happy that they invited me. But what?
Yiddish speakers would have
Yiddish, yeah, but I don't know Yiddish.
Yes.
Oh, your talk was terrific.
Thank you.
But do you have any concept as to the percentage or the number of people who leave either the Ultra-Orthodox or the...
We just try to know, but again, there is no real research about that. The numbers are between 10 to 15 in both groups, mostly boys. The girls are more conservative almost in every community. It's very hard to. It's very, very hard. It's tough to live in both community. Once they leave, they face all set of problems and hard time. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Here's my question. This might be off tangent to the topic at hand. Would the Amish consider it cheating if you use solar power?
Yeah, much more than before. Some communities decide they allow to use batteries. So in some communities, they said that basically solar panel is similar to batteries. Some communities don't allow. I can say that in terms of, I call them my family, every year I come, here is a kind of light in the restroom, so in the middle of the night you don't need to take the light with you. Or they have certain thing, and I was like, did you become more modern? And she said, look, we are changing like everybody. So they have solar panel, and they have more and more solar panel. Yeah. So basically, it's hard to explain how much this is hard, that you don't have any electricity at home. So solar panel is very, very helpful.
Okay, final question. What does your research on Amish and ultra-Orthodox women tell you about three concepts: religion, secularism, and modernity?
Wow. Can I stay for 2 more hours? First of all, that religion, secularism, and modernity are much more complicated than I thought. Much more complicated. And perhaps the truth is that everything is more, I'm sorry, I'm a very sensitive person, everything is more painful than you think. So to be a part of religious community means that people control you almost every minute, but whenever you need help, somebody will show up. I hate the control, but I want that somebody will show up, okay? And sometimes it's very painful that you pay a price just, to be part of the community. Sometimes I'm very jealous with my secular friends, especially if we have 3 days, Rosh Hashanah and then Shabbat, and I have so much work to do, and I just think about my secular friends that they get everything done. There's 3 days off. I go to the synagogue back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and all of the visitors. But sometimes they look at me and they are jealous. So in terms of when you are so close to these communities, you just feel what does it mean to be a modern person. This is such a fun. I have credit card, I have driving license, I have passport, I can go wherever I want. But sometimes when I look at my Amish friends or ultra-Orthodox friends, and they are so peaceful, and I'm just try to be happy, and I always say, okay, perhaps after the next promotion I'll be happy. Perhaps, I'll finish this article and finally it will be accepted, and then I will be happy. And not. So I understand that it's much more complicated, and perhaps what I really understand is the most important thing in your life is to be connected to good people. And within both groups I found such an amazing people that I feel connected to. So I'm very thankful for that. Did I answer you? I tried.
Well enough in the time allotted. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that on. Thank you for a really wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot.